Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you again for this latest in our series of the Resilient Lincolnshire project from the Lincoln International Business School. My name is Craig Marsh. It's my pride to be the Pro Vice Chancellor and head of the College of Business at the University of Lincoln. And this has been a really interesting journey for us over the last, I think, about 8 months or so now, and possibly nearly 40 of these conversations that we've been having over those 8 months from a project that we set up really, I think, to make sure that we were being really active in our region with our businesses in understanding their insights and their responses to what has been a global challenge this year. And we've had so many really interesting discussions over the period of that time. We've had so many insights and such really good examples of what we would call of resilient businesses surviving and thriving through this pandemic. So the purpose of this call is really to do a synthesis or a summary of those 8 months, that 8 months journey that we've been on together in Lincolnshire and actually in the region and globally over that time. And I'm delighted to be joined today to help us with that summary by the chair and the chief executive of the Greater Lincolnshire Enterprise Partnership, Local Enterprise Partnership, because really they started the journey with us, and it was a conversation between Pat and I think going back all the way back to April, where we first started to set out some of the challenges that we were faced with. So Pat, Ruth, it's such a pleasure to see you both here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I just in case anybody doesn't know, I'm sure everybody does, but Pat Doody, who's the chair of the LEP, and Ruth Carver, who's the CEO of the LEP. Pat, Ruth, it's great to see you both.
Afternoon, Craig.
Good to be here. Thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. So what we'll be doing over the next hour or so is really just that: reflect back and reflect forwards. We're going to have a look back from the university's perspective, but possibly more importantly from the LEP's perspective, about what kind of a year we've had, and that'll be from an economic perspective, from a political perspective, but also I think probably more importantly, looking forward to some thinking through what lessons we've had, what sorts of experiences we've had, and thinking through what is next, what's coming up next, both for the university but also for the GLEP. What are our priorities coming up? So that's really the gist of this. And we'll run it as a sort of conversation. We do have some slides to show as well, with some data on, which we'll kick off with. For those who are listening to us, please do post your comments or questions in the comments box as you see fit. And we'll take a couple of points over the course of the next hour or so to take anything that we feel that we can answer now. So hopefully that will be of interest to everybody. So I'd like to start by inviting Pat and Ruth to start with your overview. You've prepared some slides for us, so we can have a look at what's happened and also what our priorities are coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll start. We are very much, so Ruth Carver, Chief Exec of the Greater Lincolnshire LEP. We're very much doing a double act today. I unfortunately get to do the really dull kind of data bit, and Pat will do the kind of more discussive kind of commentary, I suppose, on the economy. But before I just do start going into those, I just wanted to congratulate the university and the National Centre for Organisational Resilience for the work on this, actually. I've not managed to join many of them, but I certainly have listened to a number of them whilst I've been multitasking, kind of doing other things. So the kind of the listen again function in particular has been really useful. In fact, I was listening to the sustainability one this morning whilst I was doing a piece of work on green recovery. So I think they've been really fantastic and insightful and exactly what we needed as a kind of a business community. So thank you. I'm pleased to be involved in this. Just a few things about kind of the Greater Lincolnshire LEP, actually, about who we are. We are a local economic, I suppose, partnership, and we cover the Humber to the Wash. We are private sector led, but we are a partnership between the public sector, the private sector, and the education sector. And our real focus is to be that independent, loud voice for the economy and to shout loud and proud about Greater Lincolnshire. And our role really is to speak to government with one voice, to create that noise so that additional investment cases can be made for the Greater Lincolnshire area. And it is quite strong that there is a national agenda of levelling up, and our role in that is to effectively, put together business cases, etc., to counteract kind of underinvestment, I suppose, that's been in the East Midlands and the Greater Lincolnshire area. We also have Business Lincolnshire, which is a brand which works very closely with all the businesses across Greater Lincolnshire. So it's the business support arm, and we have Team Lincolnshire, which is the inward investment arm of Greater Lincolnshire. Okay, thank you very much for indulging me and just kind of saying who we are and what we do. It does help to give some context. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do, as I said, was just kind of focus on the economy. So we've been talking very much, next slide please, we've been talking very much about the health crisis in this country, and we also have been focusing on the economic crisis, but it's been, what a year it has been. Actually, it's been a year like no other, and that has dramatically affected the economy as well as many other things. So I'm going to give a bit of an overview about the Greater Lincolnshire economy. Overall, our economy has been fairly resilient, but that is resilient compared to the rest of the country. So we've had, in summary, lower levels of redundancies, lower take-up of government support schemes, of which there's been a plethora, and smaller increases in JobSeeker claims, universal credit claims, often a barometer for the economy. But we do describe, and the evidence suggests that it's very much a twin-track economy in Greater Lincolnshire. The retail sector, the visitor economy, and the leisure sector has been dramatically hit, but there are some booming sectors too, particularly in construction and manufacturing. And so it is that kind of tale of two places, which is reflected nationally as well, but it's quite acute in Greater Lincolnshire because of the reliance on retail, visitor economy and leisure across most of the patch. Next slide, please. Thank you. Some of these slides are national and some of them are local. So we talk about in the economy, thinking about what has happened in the year, and you can see from that particular slide that we are a little bit on a pathway to recovery. So forecasts at the beginning of the pandemic were more acute than they are currently. And so there are some elements of recovery in there, but the UK economy has still got a very long way to make up the loss of GDP during the pandemic. And so we're currently about 23% lower than we were in April. Next slide, please. One of the things that we kind of measure locally is the universal credit claimant as one of the barometers, I suppose, for the economy. The claimant rate nationally has gone up significantly, but ours are slightly lower than the national average. And I think that's because some of the seasonality with our workforce, and I think that's some of the opportunities that have evolved through the food sector and the care sector in particular. There has been some element of kind of retraining and job opportunities. Whether they're long-term jobs will be another issue, but substantially more claimants in the system than there ever have been before, and that this doesn't kind of include self-employed people. This is people that are seeking work. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you. One of the things that we've been focused on as a LEP is coordinating and ensuring that there is consistency to the support from business. And there's been unprecedented support from national government, both in terms of lockdown 1 and the current situation that we're in tier 3 lockdown 2. And we've just detailed there some of the grants that have come into the Greater Lincolnshire area through local authorities, through self-employment, and just contrast there the workforce numbers of furlough. So you can see at the beginning of lockdown 1, we had about 30% of our entire workforce on furlough, and we're currently at about 6% of the workforce on furlough or partial furlough, with a huge proportion of that being in retail, hospitality and leisure. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is a really interesting barometer that we use. This is used with Google Analytics, and it's a very big brother-esque about, you know, tracking our workplaces and our journey times. And we've been monitoring this and getting weekly reports from Google Analytics so that we can understand the patterns of behaviour across Greater Lincolnshire. And we particularly use this in situations where you can see where people are looking at their weekly shops, or, you know, what kind of activity they're undertaking. So, and still, this is the latest one, if I believe, from December, you know, workplaces are still about 29%, 30% emptier than they were than the beginning of the pandemic. And so there's still awful lot of remote working taking place. And that kind of throughout the pandemic was as high as 70% in early kind of March, April time, and has then gone on to 29%. Thank you. Next slide, and we're nearly there. There's a little bit of a delay there, so I think I should ask for it a little bit earlier. Next slide, please. Is it coming? Thank you. I think then just kind of summarising into the future prospects, we've taken this as a national example from the OBR, just looking at what some of the scenarios might be for bounce back, etc., and looking at the impact on unemployment. There's really much a kind of a view that early in the first quarter of the new calendar year is where we might see some of the unemployment and particularly redundancies likely to rise. And Pat will go on to talk about, you know, how we're supporting in that area. But certainly the first quarter, with the double whammy of uncertainty currently of no deal and kind of Brexit, and the pandemic, with the ending of furlough and some of the seasonality work ending, looking like higher levels of unemployment. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so that was a quick kind of overview of the economy. I'll pass over to Pat, the chair of the LEP, to just talk through the role of the LEP and some of the views going forward. Maybe next slide.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Ruth. And I too would like to, I'd written down to thank Craig, Ruth and the team at the business school for the work on the Resilient programme. It's been really very focused and very, very relevant, and has really been so quick after events to pick up the absolute themes of the moment. So that's been really good. I won't repeat what Ruth's gone through there really, other than to talk just broadly about some of the issues. Business support has been a major part and a much bigger part of our usual business as usual. And I would pay tribute to the local councils. The district and upper tier authorities ensured our businesses got funding much quicker than some areas in the country, and over 19,000 businesses have received a total of £270 million of grant support during phase 1 and phase 2 of lockdown. Workforce, the work we've done on the workforce ranges both from the early work, which was trying to make sure that sectors that were still very busy, food, etc., had some of the rules changed to enable them still to carry on feeding the nation. When, you know, going back all those days, it seems a long time ago now, part of the challenge was making sure that food factories could produce food with the logistics in a way that coped with the demand shift. And we did quite a lot of lobbying with government to get inspection regimes, driver hours amended to make sure that could carry on at the level it needed to feed the nation. We got involved with Feed the Nation campaigns, and we're turning our attention now more to the switch in skills training to digital, as well as putting plans in place to deal with any mass redundancies that might face us as furloughing unwinds. Sectors, we've always believed that sectors are a strength of this area, whether it's food or more recently defence. And part of our role has been to make sure the sectors that have got opportunities for growth receive the support they need and investment, and those that are struggling also receive the attention and profiling that we need to do. Funding has continued and actually has probably strengthened this year, not just from the towns funds that see 6 of our towns in Lincolnshire bidding for growth funds, but the fact we've had the Getting Building Fund, which has enabled 2 or 3 large projects, the next phase of Holbeach Food Valley, the new defence cluster in Lincoln, and work in the energy sector in the north, as well as several colleges bidding in for digital shaping and enabling funds. And the intelligence piece has been a major part of our work stream over the past 9 months or so. We speak every week now to MPs, local authorities, ourselves as a business group, and to ministers. We have several roundtables, and we've called a few of those ourselves with ministers, either to deal with sectors that are having a tough time, i.e. tourism, or those that have got opportunities, energy and renewables. You can see there the £25.8 million shovel-ready projects that the fund is enabling, business supported at record levels, and I think there's something like 42,000 businesses have visited the website to directly help themselves with support. And we've channeled more funding, as have the local authorities, into Business Lincolnshire to make sure that those businesses that needed support and someone to talk to were able to do that with face-to-face, not just web-based support. And behind all that, we've been working up a strategic 1 to 5 year recovery plan. We moved from response to the pandemic to recovery, back into response as we went into wave 2, and back into recovery now. So next slide, please. The next one's a slightly, just wait for this slide to flip over. There we go. So that's quite a busy slide, so I won't go through all of it. But we had the immediate challenges, you can see those, and we still face that rising unemployment. Forecast to get to 7.5%, which I think for us is an extra 10,000 people unemployed in Lincolnshire. So clearly our minds are very much focused on how we can help those people and support them through job change and support back into the workplace. We saw last time that the labour market recovered quite slowly from last recovery. So, we're steering ourselves for that and trying to improve the upturn. The high levels of corporate debt, which means that companies will be perhaps more resistant to investment programs, albeit we know because of the shift to robotics and the need to change business models that investment is going to be really important. Digitalisation goes without saying, and the very localised effects. We deal on one hand with what we see as an enormous opportunity on the South Humber from renewables, carbon capture, offshore wind, and the Freeport's opportunity, and then we go to the coast where we've got businesses that have been closed down for a long time. Butlins, which not just has a large employee workforce itself, but feeds that economy, has been closed now and will be till Christmas. That's a business that we've relied upon in the past to be a magnet for the coast, for Skegness in particular. So those impacts are really significant. And whilst on the positive side, we could look forward to a bounce back in 2021, those businesses have been starved of money over the summer and indeed Christmas, and will be in a tough place to face the potential opportunities they face. How we work together, so local partnerships, I can't stress enough how well we work with people like the university, the colleges, local district councils and government to ensure that we are as well equipped as we can be in dealing with the pandemic, first of all, and the recovery opportunities. And we're right in the throes now of a spending review bidding programme, and we've just gone out for a call for pipeline for businesses and institutions to let us know what they have as fundable projects that will aid economic prosperity for this area. Rapid introduction of national policy, an agreement with the local government to respond to local needs. So we have put a lot more of our resource into pandemic responses than we have, whilst at the same time still dealing with the planning, the industrial strategy, the things that mean long-term planning still need to be made, because we will emerge from this, of course, next year. The vaccine's around now, and we hope it can have an impact quickly. And it's important that our original thoughts about what makes this place a great place remain and are supported. And data sharing, there's never been a more important time to understand the dynamics of your economy, what's happening to unemployment, and how you react to that. And then the government announced Build Back Better programme, which takes our industrial strategy, which is the plans we make based on what will this area need to make a successful future, and that has input from business, from institutions and business, to help inform what that should look like. And if you go to our website, you'll see the draft version of that on the website. And I'd recommend anybody, I think I did this last time, if you want to know what's deemed to be a place to put your business in front of, that is a place to go, because it will give you lots of rich information. Shared Prosperity Fund, which is the replacement for European funding, is coming, and will start to feature in next year. And then other topics there, the Green Revolution, and that Green Revolution, will be asked, I'm sure, to reflect on what's changed in this 12-month period. And there is absolutely no doubt that the focus on green recovery, green revolution, sustainability is enormous. And I think any business that's not got that at the forefront of its business plans is missing something. The link that more and more businesses are making with the UN sustainability goals, those 17 objectives, is very real now. And there's a real focus on that being the thing that makes your business a purposeful business. Next slide, final slide. Then we go to questions. So this is just really a summary of I suppose, our thought process to protect what we've got, to progress those prosperity enhancing businesses, to enable the area to be prospering as soon as possible. I think most economic forecasts put the recovery into 2022 in reality, so 2021 is deemed to be a bit of holding water. That might be gloomy, we might recover quicker, but the unemployment and of course Brexit, which is the great unknown. So pieces on there. Opportunities are plentiful. There are lots of areas of our economy that face a very bright future. And we have examples of people like Tended, which is a business that the university knows well. It was formed out of Spark House, a business that based its original business model on dealing with people who fell over in the home, and they've adapted that technology to deal with social distance in the workplace, and been very successful at adapting their model to suit the current climate. So they're the examples of business that the digital space is growing. I'll leave you to look at those issues there. Local partnership, I probably can't stress enough how important it is that we join up the business voice with the Chamber of Commerce, CBI, the IOD, the FSB, that we gather together the thoughts of business and we harness that into producing plans for our Greater Lincolnshire area that can be delivered to enable growth, and therefore people that inevitably lose their jobs in sectors that are going through a cyclical change, and retail certainly is doing that we can produce enough alternative skills or job opportunities that mean there are jobs for everybody. And that is one of the fundamental roles the LEP sets itself, along with the local authorities. I think we should finish there, Craig. I'm conscious of time and to give you enough time for questions and thoughts, but that's really a summary of what LEP's been doing. Very busy time, as it has been for everybody, and a lot of defensive thinking and actions, as well as the more positive planning for the future coming out of this very difficult period.
Pat, Ruth, thank you so much for that fascinating summary of both, kind of a backward look over this this unique period that we've been living through, and also some of the plans that we're putting in place for particularly those recovery plans. And there are indeed a few comments in the chat were saying, really, I think expressing gratitude to the GLEP for having been so responsive and so in touch with business, that really the situation would have been a lot worse without some of the work that you have been doing to both direct funding to the right places for recovery, but also now to put those plans in place such that we can make sure that Lincolnshire is indeed resilient over the next 2 to 3 years, as really some fairly fundamental shifts start to take place, I think. We have had one question which I'll just post in from Howard, if I may, that's just coming from the audience, and perhaps one for you, Ruth, maybe. So from Howard saying, is hitting the pause button on the local government reorganisation a problem or a relief? So
it's a political question.
Are you prepared to take yourself on that one?
I think we've always been quite supportive of devolution at the LEP. I think who wouldn't potentially want more decision making locally. I think some of the challenges that we face in getting a very strong voice for Greater Lincolnshire is that we're incredibly led by Whitehall, incredibly led by Westminster, and there is not enough funds that are directed locally, and those funds that are directed locally are still very tightly controlled by the centre. It's their rules, it's their Green Book Treasury appraisals, etc. It's their terms. So I think certainly on devolution, the LEP has always been broadly supportive and taken the temperature of business to ensure that we are kind of reflecting that. And currently, devolution is so linked with local government reorganisation. That's the agenda. We certainly are, hopeful that there'll be a white paper on devolution, local government reorganisation, the future of regional bodies, etc. It's been a long promised paper and conversation, and I think we await with interest, the publication, hopefully, of that in the springtime. But obviously, government and local bodies have been very focused on pandemic. It certainly would have been a distraction over the last few months in the way that the sheer efforts of local authorities have been working so hard to support the business community.
That's great. Thank you, Ruth. And would you say, therefore, as your position on the GLEP, are you sort of broadly kind of optimistic about the mood music that we do get from government, and which, of course, has been hugely well publicised and documented, about the levelling up agenda, about the kind of devolution of power to the regions to be able to support their own agendas? I mean, these are all the things we hear about, and I think from what I'm picking up, that actually you're broadly positive that we will indeed see that happening, both in terms of funding and also political support in devolution. I'd just be interested on a sort of a general perspective on that.
Do you want to come in first, Pat?
Yeah, I think the important change, I think, Craig, on levelling up. So levelling up, is a phrase that's been bandied around without making that sound demeaning for a period of time. But the government have moved now with the Green Book to change how they evaluate the success factors of investment. And when you compare an investment in London with one in Lincolnshire, inevitably London one will deliver more growth because it's a more dynamic economy to start with. They've recognised that now, and I think they're recognising levelling up. You've got to make different decisioning, and recognise that places like Lincolnshire are going to need investment and more of it. So there's a recognition. The fact they're talking about it to the degree they are gives us the confidence and hope that we will have more of a share of that government wallet going forward. And we do get encouraged by the fact that the amount of money being made available for growth and infrastructure spending in 2020 is the same as the previous year. So there's been no cutback in, despite the pressures on government purse, there has been no cutback in the amount of funding that will be made available. We're not sure yet how that will be distributed. We'll get a prospectus in January, but we will have every expectation to receive a bigger share of the wallet than we would have had in previous years.
That's right. And actually, I think the strength of the GLEP that we do have in Lincolnshire will actually be a strategic advantage for us, because obviously a lot of that will be controlled by and funded through the GLEP. So it puts us, I mean, my perspective as an external, I think puts Lincolnshire in a very strong position in that regard, actually, I have to say. So I think that is optimistic, isn't it? Despite all of the challenges we've been through, but actually the signs are very good, aren't they, over the next, I suppose, the time of your recovery plan, I guess the next 5 years or so, that we'll start to see that levelling up really starting to take place and having a meaningful effect on the region.
Yeah, definitely, Craig. And there's certainly some opportunities that we have that probably other places haven't got. We have got the opportunity for the visitor economy to recover. I noticed the question there that Richard Wills asked about.
Should we put that one in? I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah. So, particularly on the visitor economy, because obviously one of the clear sort of insights from your presentation that we know is it's really been a bit of a game of two hearts, hasn't it, this pandemic? I mean, there have been some bits of the economy which have done really well, and of course those that have suffered terribly, and of course the visitor economy has fallen into the suffering category. And this is almost a bit about the reshaping of our economy in Lincolnshire, in a sense, isn't it? I mean, so your perspective on this question from Richard, Pat, or you lead it?
Yeah, I mean, there's one of the main issues, I suppose, is to make sure we escalate the what people in the sector feel are their opportunities for recovery. So, what do they want? What do they feel will help them best? And people were calling for they weren't calling for the Help Out to Eat Out was a very well received initiative at the time. Whether it led to an increase in COVID cases, history will judge us on that. But other factors, other steps the government took in terms of reducing VAT to 5%, giving business rates relief, they're the sort of things that we would support going forward, that the visitor economy sector has a continuation of that VAT relief and a continuation of the business rates relief to help them get to an opportunity next year to take advantage of what we believe will be a flood back to, there'll be pent-up demand for particularly domestic-based visitor economy opportunities, and at the same time investing in the infrastructure to make sure, small things help. The work around the relief road that both us and the county have carried out to improve the roundabouts, improves access to the coast. It's still a difficult journey and one would like to smooth out, but both the sort of hard-based infrastructure and also the digital infrastructure, they're the sorts of things that we've got to try to address to improve, to make sure that this economy can take advantage of that upturn when it comes. And there's been investments in cycle highways along the coast. There's a lot of very positive work to improve the visitor economy experience. So when you ask what else we can do, we can encourage schemes to come forward that we can help fund with, that give that coast and the rest of the county, not just the coastal economy, a better chance of retaining visitors for longer periods.
Thank you, Pat. And Ruth, your perspective on the question of the visitor economy and the particular impact it's had on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we can do really well as a LEP is to give that visitor economy businesses a voice. So we have a visitor economy board. It's made up of large and small players as well as local authorities, and their role is to kind of really shape and test the temperature. And the things that they're saying to us is very much about the things that kind of Pat was saying. There's certainly something around what is a staycation offer for Greater Lincolnshire. How do we market that? How do we develop bookable products so that people can kind of actually really benefit from the full range of things that we have here. And there really is a trend for much more sustainable green tourism than we currently have on offer. So we've got this fabulous kind of beautiful landscape across Lincolnshire, and we know that because we kind of live here. But is it accessible? Is it easy to kind of enjoy in a sustainable kind of way? So there's two big themes that are coming out of those groups. How do we maybe support them? This is not just the LEP, this is national kind of government and others. How do we help them with digital, especially some of the smaller businesses, to develop bookable products? And how do we package the sustainable tourism or the green kind of an agenda? We are keen on something called a tourism zone. So there are plans with government as a sector deal with the tourism sector to focus on increasing the number of apprenticeships that are available in the tourism sector, but also designated zones around the country, which would work with DCMS, the department that's responsible for tourism, to focus on really where could the recovery go and where could you drive forward a strong partnership there. And we're at the forefront of hopefully lobbying for something to be developed in Lincolnshire, across Greater Lincolnshire. Thank you.
That's really interesting. I hadn't heard of that. Thank you, Ruth. That's really interesting. And I know a couple of the things that you picked up on there. We've also been interested in our work at the university, not least of which through the International Bomber Command Centre, of course, which I'm very proud to have as part of my college. And I've heard that is encouraging people to stay local, right? So this is your economy. This is a beautiful county. Take your holidays here and do some of that kind of promotion. I think it also linked into what Pat was saying a little earlier about the green revolution, and sort of linking that sector and asking the question, how can we drive regrowth, or how can we allow that sector to rebound by building in some of the aspects of the green revolution and sustainable tourism. So that's really, really interesting, Ruth. Thank you for sharing that. And perhaps before we move off and onto the next subject, there's one other question that is, I think, is related to this, which Richard had asked, which is about almost a little bit about this rebalancing again. Other more smaller businesses being established as a result of people being made full. I think nationally there has been some evidence of that. Is there anything that we're seeing in Lincolnshire in that regard? Is it early stages, or is that something that we're seeing? Pat, anything from your perspective?
I haven't seen the figures, Craig, but knowing how much of our local economy is made up by the S in SME, sole businesses, sole traders, small partnerships, I'm sure that there'll be no doubt that people who've found themselves in changed economies will be looking to see what they can do themselves. We can certainly perhaps publicise on our website, Ruth, if we get some figures on that. And I guess, people visit the Growth Hub to find out how they can establish a business and how they can cut through the red tape to get themselves in shape to be effective at that. And certainly, as people work from home, the opportunity to do something web-based and digitally based is going to be, the future for many people. One of the biggest mega trends of the last 10 years has been the shift from high street travel agents to specialist sole traders whose job it is to tell people where the best villas are, where the best, as a one-man business, a one-woman business, doing that as a bespoke point of excellence has been one of the real mushrooming changes of the last certainly 5 years, as the high street has come under less visitor for that type of walk-in, and people want more specialised, experience-based touches. So they're the sorts of things that have grown. Yeah.
Actually, Pat, I think it's a really good example of a phenomenon that we've been observing over the last eight months or so, which I think applies to individuals as well as to businesses, and that key characteristic of resilience. How well you can, if I can use the jargon, pivot. How quickly can you shift your current focus, your current business model, or even your current skill set, if it's an individual, into something that is more relevant to some of the future themes that you've been talking about. And that seems to us to have been almost a characteristic, an essential characteristic of whether you get through this or not.
Yeah, it has, and I think that gives us a chance to really sort of underline how much work's going on in the county, both in terms of well-being as a generality, mental well-being, but also as the town's funds, as their bids get backed and we start to develop centres for rural resilience. This county is doing, Dean Fathers and others at the university and other institutions are doing a lot of work to start to deal with the fact we've got a very disparate county. How do we better deliver healthcare to such a disparate population, and deal with the fact that this COVID position has given people a lot of mental well-being challenges, and there's a great deal of work going in a real positive area to deliver some outcomes there.
Very much so, and in particular that connection between something that isn't purely about healthcare or mental health, but the crossover between the organisational factors that contribute to resilience, and one of the outputs of which is indeed health outcomes, and that's such a fascinating work. And I'm again really pleased to have that work going on inside the college. Now, perhaps that's the point, Ruth, Pat, if you can obviously just stay in the conversation, if you would.
Yeah.
I'd love to bring my colleague in at this point, Rishi Agarwal, who my Director of Business Development, who has been the prime mover in the Resilient Lincolnshire series over the last 8 months or so. It would not have existed without Ruchi. She's been pushing this forward and has led from the front on this. So Ruchi, it's great to have you with us. And Ruchi, it has been an interesting journey for us, hasn't it? And picking up on some of the things that Pat and Ruth have picked up on in terms of what we've observed as resilience over the last few months.
Oh, indeed, Craig, and it's indeed an honor to have a comment from the GLEP on the Resilient Lincolnshire series, because it has been such an interesting and such an insightful journey over the last 8 months, 9 months for us as a university, as a business school, with a civic duty to really listen to our businesses and to really tie up, on what are they saying, how can we join the dots, what is our role and responsibility towards the ecosystem. It has been an amazing journey. And I don't know how in March we came up with the word Resilient Lincolnshire, because if there's one word that this county has pivoted on, it is resilience. Whether it is our students, whether it is businesses, whether they're private sector, public sector, I think that's been the one operative word. So, well done for picking on that. And, we started this whole journey in April is when we launched our first platform. From April to now, we've had about 40 conversations with different sectors, different industries, to listen in to see what's happening on the ground, how are businesses looking at this challenge. And we found that a lot of them are looking at this as an opportunity to rediscover, repivot, and even recover. So we call that series Business Beyond the Curve. That how a business is looking at going beyond this curve. It was so insightful because right from the theater to the food industry to defense sector, things that really, the third sector, things that define the fabric of Lincolnshire, we went out and spoke to them and tried to see many, many different perspectives. Before we could narrow it down to call something, we called it the leadership lenses. And we looked at all of those conversations, about 35 of them by then, and moved away a little bit and found that there were 4 themes that really, stood out as leadership lenses that Lincolnshire businesses were thinking about, were worried about, and were finding solutions for at the same time.
So we related to leadership, Richard. That's right. And we sort of distilled all of this, these wonderful conversations that I've been involved in, some of them that many people have watched. And so why leadership per se? I mean, it's not, perhaps it's an obvious question, but why would we focus on leadership as one of the ways of parsing these insights?
So it's very interesting, actually, that irrespective of the functional skill or the industry that you belong to, the one thing that allows people to take an organization along, to take their employees along, to take morale along, especially at times like this, pivots around leadership, the kind of leadership that's leading an organization. And, there are theories around leadership that says leadership is in everybody, right? Everyone is a leader in an organization at the end of the day. However, if you look at a time like this, it takes a certain type of resilience in the people who lead you, theoretically, to be able to take you forward. And hence, leadership became sort of that umbrella, the cover, the one word that everyone was looking at. What kind of leader do I need to be, or am I, to make the most of this opportunity or challenge that they were facing? And so we came up with these 4 leadership lenses, which seem to cut right across all industry segments, as Ruth, you and Pat have mentioned in the narrative so far. And those were the resilient lens. That's how do I build a resilient organization? The responsible lens. How we've talked about green, we talked about sustainability, Pat, about the UN goals. How am I to be a responsible, sustainable organization going forward? That was keeping leaders awake. The third one was the emotional lens, mental health. How do I take people along? How do I keep teams connected by being like this through a medium which is not a physical medium anymore? And the fourth was the technological lens, that the forced adoption of technology and the ability for organizations to look at mechanizing their operations that bit more, about the world not being a geographic place anymore, but being beyond geographic boundaries. These 4 lenses came out, very strongly to us when we moved away a little bit from what Lincolnshire was saying. And actually what we did, Craig, it was an interesting journey, wasn't it? That we took these local leadership lenses and we tested them globally. So as a business school, and as a business school rooted in our region, we have access to knowledge nationally, globally as well, that we really want to make that local to global story live for our region. So we took this and we tested it at 4 platforms globally with the 4 themes. And it was so fascinating to see that leaders from right across, we went from America to the Caribbean to Australia to India and Vietnam. We had people from all over. The very interesting conversations in November. And what that played back to us was, it is the same challenges that leaders are grappling with in their regions, but the way they do it, in the cultural context of how they do it, became a very, very interesting learning experience for us. And I think it is the learnings from those conversations, those very rich conversations, which actually you can view anytime on our YouTube channel. Those conversations, to be able to package them and bring them back into our region, then makes an immensely important next step of how does our region benefit from the work that all the organizations you mentioned, from the GLEP's great work that's happened right now. How can we add into that narrative with what we're listening and hearing and make that work for our businesses towards recovery?
Very much so, Richie. Thank you for that very succinct summary of a very long and really, really interesting piece of work that we've been doing with our businesses. And I think your final point there also highlights what we firmly believe to be the key role of the university in these conversations, to be able to sort of allow that knowledge to flow between our local businesses, our local organisations, global businesses in one direction, and then back again, so that our businesses can learn from that. And I think we haven't really finished that, Ruchi, have we yet? I think there's more to come on that particular process, derived from the four lenses that we came through. Isn't that right?
Oh, indeed. We are hoping, that with the support of our partners and the support of everyone here, we'll be able to pick up, learn from those experiences, but convert that into products and into experiences and into insights and actionable items that our businesses can take back with them. The one beautiful thing that we have as a university, you'll agree, is the trust of the businesses. And I'm so proud of the way we link in with our businesses in Lincolnshire, who come to us for various things, right from small things they want to learn to larger conversations they want to have. And I'm hoping that we can make the most of this last year and bring it right back to our businesses in actionable items.
Very much so. And actually, I do have to thank Pat and Ruth for having supported us with that. We did a little bit of funding just to add a bit of research into those areas that we've identified, which will really help, I think, to take and if I can use the term, almost like package some of that work that we've done and present it as a value add to our businesses. And I'm sure that this will no doubt evolve into some other projects, Ruchi, that you will concoct and devise for us and have the sort of the next version of Resilient Lincolnshire. I'm sure that you perhaps have some ideas on that already, do you, about what's next?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think and that demand comes from the market. The point is, the beauty of this whole construct is the businesses tell us what they want, and we respond to what they need, by using all that we've got. So it looks like there is certainly, and Pat and Ruth, you'll agree that there are certain skills that businesses are now looking for as they look to reshape and recover their business the way they are. And those skills are very identifiable. You mentioned digital, for example, Pat, the very, very key skill. What does digitalization mean? And I think the university already is doing a number of things in that area. So if we are able to put the right level of skill at the right speed, in the right context and tonality, it would be of immense value. And we're really fortunate that we're speaking to all areas of the country. So fortunately, we're going right from the north, the south, the east, and the west, and speaking to businesses and collecting what they need there, which becomes a very, very important responsibility that we hold.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rishi. So, Pat, the reskilling is something that you particularly touched on, didn't you? I mean, and you have a perspective on that in terms of what broadly, I mean, what is it we need to be doing to make sure that the inevitable unemployment which is about to hit us, how do we get through that quicker, and how do we get people reskilled in such a way to meet the needs of our new economy once we get through this?
Well, I'll bring Ruth in as well, but for me, it's recognising where, simplistically, where job decline is happening and where job growth is being enabled. And you take a simple thing like the offshore renewable energy, which sounds a very it's a very strongly growing area. We are already world leaders in what we do there, and with the announcement of the new wind farms offshore, there is enormous growth. Boris has announced we're going to go from 10 gigawatts to 40 gigawatts over the next 10 years, or by 2030 over the next 9 years. That's tremendous growth, and they're going in now and being serviced out of Grimsby, not so far away. I think already, so we speak to the Catapult Centre there. So the government has set up these Catapult Centres around the country, where they invest in concepts of how you can accelerate growth in areas that have got growth potential. Offshore renewable energy being one of those, and it's making people aware of the job opportunities and be upskilling them. So giving them, and I think in this case, Ruth, there's an Institute of Technology that's got some link to that up there already, isn't there, in Grimsby? So I guess our job is to try to enable those sort of educational centres to develop the skills for the future. There are quite big numbers involved in that, as well as helping people who are in other sectors that are declining. And we've talked about retailers being one of the most obvious. How do they either equip themselves to go into self-employed status by using digital? Ruchi has mentioned that's an almost unavoidable focus for people, because it is the skill that's going to make the difference going forward. And many of our colleges and further education providers, as well as the universities, are investing in how they deliver that, both to their existing, how they adapt digital to existing learning methodology, as well as helping people move into new job space. So it's working with educational providers, it's working with the infrastructure to make sure broadband can cope with that shift, and it has done so far, but it needs to work better. And gaining the ideas from business about what skills they want going forward. What are the new skills? You know, we're training engineers in some cases in old skills. They still need to know how old things work, but they need to know how to program the machines that will be the production method going forward in not very many years away from now. And we've got some great robotics work going down at Holbeachwood University. You know, they're the places that we're going to see the future growth, and there we're trying to put investment and gather the ideas together. Ruth, anything you wanted to add to that in terms of what we're doing with the educational sector? You're on mute. Say it before you start talking.
There you go. I think, you know, I think a big area is this kind of whole kind of lifelong learning approach for Greater Lincolnshire. And one of the biggest challenges, well, the two challenges I see, reskilling, which is a huge challenge and opportunity. And some of the work that we're looking at doing is a kind of job matching, I suppose. So we think that we might see some redundancies in certain sectors, or, you know, reduction in hours in many cases of kind of workers in that space. So how can they rapidly kind of retrain? And that is a whole kind of approach that is doing some job matching with DWP, but also this whole kind of coalition of education partners across Greater Lincolnshire. So I know we're interested in looking at how we might trial something between the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors into the care sector or into other opportunities. So that's a kind of a here and now. And also there's I'm really concerned as a kind of a mother of 3 children that are approaching university or approaching kind of looking for a job, how actually they will be affected by the pandemic. You know, they haven't had any experience of working, haven't had any experience of working life in the last year, just when they should have been doing so. And they really don't have visibility of what the careers of the future might look like, and therefore, you know, which avenues to go into. And these choices that they make now, you know, are so important for the rest of their lives. So I think, you know, the disproportionate effect of young people and getting a good start in both, you know, their higher education and kind of careers is something that we do a lot on. And I was just going to do one plug, actually, if I may, that we've just started an online virtual jobs and careers fair. They are monthly. It's fully funded by the LEP as a kind of pilot to see how can we overcome some of these barriers. So if there's any businesses that A, want to inspire people to kind of come and work in their sector, or B, have very specific vacancies in the here and now, they can sign up on our website to get involved. And it's a exhibition platform and one-to-one conversation, so you can almost see somebody, talk to them and interview them with up to about 200 separate conversations. So that's, we're doing our bit to kind of try and connect people in this space as much as possible.
Thank you, Ruth, and entirely legitimate to plug such an important service actually that's coming up, and thank you for the support of that in that area. It was interesting. I've been looking at the World Economic Forum, no less, have been looking at the skills agenda. They've been really pushing this. And one of the things I found really curious, actually interesting, about what their messages were, is that actually some of the eternal employability skills are going to be even more relevant. And I find this quite optimistic, actually, because you have indeed been referring to some of those, if I can just call them technical skills, that people have to shift into areas like the green economy. But actually, we're talking about the transferable skills of being able to influence people, being able to stand up and communicate, being able to build a network, being able to problem solve, being able to get involved in and think through complex decisions. If I can say this, having a 15-year-old, turn up for things on time. These sorts of generic skills, that's what they're emphasizing. Actually, they're saying that they're appealing to this generation who've been so badly affected, as you're saying, Ruth, to say these are the things that will still get you through the next 10, 15, 20. Even if you don't know what the job's going to be, you will almost certainly need to develop those skills. And we hear that all the time from our employers, don't we, Rishi? We just get this. You know, you make sure that your undergraduates know how to do this stuff, and perhaps, you know, the rest will almost not quite simplistic, but take care of itself, which is that you have your kids as well, obviously, as Ruth does. So.
Absolutely, we call it employability skills at the university. You know, how to become a more employable, productive asset to an organization. Functional skills. In fact, you know, it's a very interesting thing that there's a model which talks about functional skill, relational skill, and influential skills. 3 skills, and out of them, which one is the most important? Or, you know, was the question, and it was put out to survey in the US actually a couple of years ago. And functional skill is what you do, which is what you're taught. A relational skill is your own self-regard. And influential skill is the ability to take people along with you. And believe it or not, but the influential skill turned out to be the most important one amongst all 3. As in, if you have good function, which is hygiene, you know your stuff, and you have a positive self-regard, the ability to take people along with you, and that skill of, you know, complex problem solving, consensus building, action creation is something which is quintessentially, you know, there and will be needed in the future as well.
If we can give you some positivity, Craig, on that slant. So one of the things we've been promoting along with the County Council and doing is getting careers enterprise advisors into secondary schools along with companies, and people like Micron Clean at Skegness have done a brilliant job of engaging with local schools and academies to start to bring to them the sort of things you're talking about, the important things that matter to employers, so that when they start to choose their futures, they are seeing inspirational leaders, they are hearing about changes in sector, changes in workflow demands, and at first hand. And that programme now is, I think, pretty much across every secondary school in Lincolnshire is close to, you know, most people have engaged with it now, and some of the businesses are putting a lot of effort into, you know, helping develop their own future workforce, you know, and, you know, helping them create choices.
What a great programme. We know Micron Clean very well, of course. That's a fantastic Lincolnshire business, a great example.
Yeah,
story. Yeah. I'm one that indeed we're working with a little bit to help them expand internationally, aren't we, Rishi? into India, principally.
So virtuous circle, isn't it? People who are good at doing that tend to be good companies.
Isn't it just absolutely right? And you know, I think we accept that challenge as a university as well. We're never complacent about that as we assist our undergraduates, particularly our undergraduates, but also with our other programs that we work with in terms of our degree apprenticeship, for example, working with working professionals to help them to hone particularly those leadership skills, and we're particularly proud of that. Rushi, perhaps just a final word from you. I think we have you do have an idea of events for 2021. Perhaps just share that with us. What may be coming up in 2021? Perhaps the LIBS Connect being our main thing. Is that right?
Yeah, you know, as our duty to connect with businesses in the region, with people in the region. In fact, we go between students, researchers, academics, businesses, and provide a platform from them. It is our intent actually to continue to push that, irrespective of how we begin to recover with the vaccine now in place. Hopefully, we are seeing, a bluer skies ahead. But the LIBS Connect platform, which is the Lincoln International Business School Connect, that we so enjoyed up till when the pandemic hit us, and we used to meet 3 times a year. We're hoping to be able to resurrect that as a version morphing from Resilient Lincolnshire back into hopefully a version where we can begin to meet each other safely. And we're hoping that in the spring we can bring that back to Lincolnshire, Craig. So let's keep an eye on that and see how we can continue conversations we started together.
Something we can all look forward to. I think many of us are focused on the on Easter being the point at which we can all sort of see that light starting to dawn at the end of the tunnel. So thank you so much, Rishi. Pat, Ruth, any final words or observations from yourself before we draw this to a close? Pat?
Just briefly from me, Craig, and thank you again for organising today. I think when I did the initial one, I concluded by, somebody asked what was the skill going forward we need the most, and apart from the very obvious ones of leadership, I think collaboration still remains for me the really important area where you do definitely generate more by pulling 2 ones make a 3, and that's been never more evident. I think we're lucky that we have such a strong district and upper tier authority working with business. We do generally find that produces positive results. We've got very good enablers like university and colleges that work with us along with other partners, and because we're perhaps slightly marginal in terms of many markets, it's more important that we do that pulling together to link the Stamfords with Skegnesses and the Grimsbys with Gainsboroughs, that takes work and effort, and it means people have to try their best to bring the best out of what the area can deliver. So collaboration for me continues to be the really important one.
Thank you, Pat. That's such an important insight, and a really striking theme from certainly some of the insight that you brought now and in your role. So thank you so much, Pat. Ruth, any final observations from you?
I don't think I've got any final observation. I think, that's a really positive point to end on, isn't it? The resilient community in which we exist within Greater Lincolnshire is incredibly strong and supportive. And I think we need to learn from that and even build on it even further.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you both for joining us. And indeed, actually, without really conferring, it was precisely the point that I was going to end up as well. But it was very striking from what both of you said and from the work that Ruchi has done. That partnership, the collaboration, the close relationships we had across all institutions in Lincolnshire is really what's going to get us through this and allow us to build back better, isn't it? And if anything that the pandemic has taught us, that to put aside politics with a small p and concentrate on what we share and what we can do together and to meet one objective for the benefit of our community. So I think that is a really good note to end on. It remains for me to thank all three of you for your massive contribution this year. It's been great working with you personally. And this has been a very nice sort of hour of just sort of summarising some of the things that have been going on. So I've really enjoyed our conversation. And perhaps I can just, on behalf of all of us, also refer to our guests and people who are listening to have a wonderful Christmas, a fantastic break. And hopefully we'll see everybody in our next event. Thank you all.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.